الحمد لله الحمد لله الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى والدين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وصلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بالإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's by the permission of Allah Jalla wa Ala that we're able to continue with our series dealing with the Quran as the solution and as a book of healing, not just a book of wahi or revelation, but this particular segment or part of the series, we chose to title it The Quran Was Sent Down to Address Your Problems. In the particular surah that we have been covering and going over, the tafsir of Shaykh Uthaymeen rahmatullah ta'ala alayh, which is the second surah of the Quran, which is Surah Baqarah. In that surah, it has the longest ahkam, rules and regulations. And we mentioned that you will find within that surah, Allahu Jalla wa Ala, He mentions, Yas'alunaka anil khamri wa maysir, Yas'alunaka anil muhid, Yas'alunaka anil kital. And to the end, Allahu Jalla wa Ala, He mentions multiple times throughout the surah, they ask you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about gambling. They ask you, Allah, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they ask you about menstruation. They ask you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about fighting, which shows that the book of Allah Jalla wa Ala was not sent down just as for instructions. It was sent down to answer the concerns and the needs and the problems that humanity had or that they were going through or dealing with. So the Quran, it was very intricate in terms of Allah Jalla wa Ala addressing the concerns of man. Another thing that you're going to find out is that man himself, the reality is man himself is one who is facing himself. And what I mean by that is that we, as human beings, we must understand that we come with a set of emotions, a set of feelings, a set of characteristics, and that there are things which are virtuous and there are things which are vices. And notice how I did not mention trauma, I did not mention distressing circumstances or situations, I did not mention calamities that have befell you. I'm talking about how you are, your thought process. Man is in need of someone to govern his thought process. Man is in need of someone governing his day to day movements because man is in need of guidance. And Allah Jalla wa Ala, He says in the same surah that we're going to be talking about today, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions, Lillahi ma fi samawati wa ma fi al that belong to Allah is the heavens and the earth. وَإِن تُبْدُوا مَا فِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَوْ تُخْفُوهُ يُحَاسِبُكُم بِهِ اللَّهُ. Al-ayah. Allah Jalla wa Ala, He says that if you chose to reveal what's in themselves, meaning in tubadu ma fi anfusikum, if you chose to reveal what's in yourselves, meaning in other words, if you chose to reveal your thoughts, what's in your heart that people cannot see but Allah can see, or you chose to keep it hidden, you chose to conceal it, all right, Allah Jalla wa Ala will bring you account for it. However, this particular ayat has been abrogated, and Allah Jalla wa Ala has made a concession not to punish us for what we think or do. I mean, what we think within our own selves. He chose to only punish us if we say or act over those things. But the point of bringing that verse is to show you that Allah Jalla wa Ala is very aware of what goes on inside man. Allah is aware of man's process, his thought process. He's aware of how he thinks. Okay? In terms of how you can think good or you can think bad. And that's just a reality. And you need to learn restraint so that you don't give into the urges or the desires that you have. So continue, inshallah, this highlighting and pointing out to the people, as well as to myself, first and foremost, that Allah Jalla wa ala has sent us a book that deals with our issues. And until we start viewing this book as such, and still we start viewing this book as a solution, and still we start viewing until we start viewing this book as a cure, until we start viewing this book as therapeutic, and still until we start viewing this book as a book of enlightenment, of a book of guidance, we're going to miss out on the most beneficial thing which Allah Jalla wa ala have sent, which is the wahi, the revelation. Okay, we left off with the opinions that Shaykh Uthaymeen rahmatullah ta'ala alayhi was talking about, dealing with the huruf al-muqati'ah, the letters, the separate letters that comes in between the verses. Ayub, I'm in the class right now. Please do not disturb me. Yes, you could. Go shut the door. Thank you. So, Allahu Jalla wa ala, Shaykh Uthaymeen, he says that he mentioned four of those opinions, and the second opinion was one that he viewed towards to be the most close to the truth. And he said that is the letters themselves, they do not contain a meaning within themselves. And he quotes for this view something that was reported by Al-Mujahid, one of the tabi'een, who studied under the companion with one Allah Ta'ala alayhim. And he says that وَحُجَّةُ هَذَا الْقَوْلِ, the proof for this opinion is that the Quran nazala bi-lughati Arab, that the Quran was revealed in the Arabic language. Okay, Allah Jalla wa ala talks about this in different surahs, and one surah which Shaykh Islam Taymiyyah used by the permission of Allah Jalla wa ala, is he used the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fi Surah Yusuf, the 12th chapter of the Quran. Inna anzalna Qur'ana Arabiyya la'allakum tuflihun wa ta'qilun. That Allah Jalla wa ala indeed has revealed the Quran in an Arabic Quran. So the Quran has been revealed in the Arabic language. Does not mean that is only for the Arabs. That is a mistake. The verse does not mean that it is only for the Arabs or those who speak Arabic, but it was revealed in the Arabic language. So the Sheikh, he says that وَهَذِهِ الْحُرُوفِ لَيْسَ لَهَا مَعْنَى فِي اللُّغَةِ الْعَرَبِيَّةِ. If we go back to the Arabic language itself and we try to find a meaning for aleph, or meaning for ta or ba or jim or ha, etc., we're going to find that they do not possess a meaning, all right, other than the fact of their letters. Okay, he says مثل ما تقول, like if you say aleph, ba, ta, tha, jim, ha, etc., فهي كذلك حروف هجائية. It'll be known to anyone that these are Arabic alphabets. All right, they don't have a meaning in terms of saying that aleph means slave, or ba means this, or ta means that. Okay, so let's see where Shaykh Uthaymeen is going at, or strengthening his position, why he chose the second opinion to be the most correct in regards to the understanding of these separate letters that comes in the beginning of certain surahs. He says, أما كونه تعالى اختار هذا الحرف دون غير ورتبها هذا ترتيب فهذا ما لا علم لنا به. He says, as for where Allah Jalla wa ala chosen these particular letters, these specific letters, Aleph, Lam, Mim, and why he arranged them in such a manner, then the knowledge of that is with Allah. Okay? He said the knowledge of that is with Allah. Why did Allah put Aleph, Lam, Mim together? Why did Allah put Taha, Yasin? Why did Allah put these letters together and arrange them in such a manner? Then the knowledge of that lies with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. طيب, he says, هذا بالنسبة لذات هذه الحروف. This is in relation to the essence of these letters. Okay? He says, أما بالنسبة للحكمة منها فعلى قول من يعين لها معنى فإن حكمة منها الدلالة على ذلك معنى مثل غيرها مما في القرآن. He said, as far as the wisdom behind doing this, okay, why did Allah, what is the wisdom, what is the hikmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placing and arranging these letters in begin of certain surahs? What is the wisdom of that? He says what is indicated by that is the meaning, or for example, other than it, that which comes in the Quran. Amma ala kullu man yaqul, as far as the opinion that they say that laysa laha ma'na, that it doesn't have a meaning, or that it does have a meaning, only Allah knows what it is, or that it's obligatory for us to refrain from even comment on it. And these was of the four different opinions, by the way. He just reiterating them. Okay, these are the four opinions that he mentioned. He says, "For inna hikmata inda ha'ulai." He said, indeed, the wisdom behind these, according to the most correct of the views pertaining to the opinions, is that which was chosen and selected by Ibn Qayyim and his teacher Sheikh Islam Taymiyyah and his student, or what's chosen by him and his student Al-Hafid al-Dhahabi, and many of the people of Ahlul Ilm. And that is huwa isharatu ila bayan i'jaz al-Quran al-Azim. Now he's saying that they say that the arrangement, the order, the selecting of these certain letters that comes in the beginning of the Quran, as far as the wisdom, it indicates to us the clarification of the miracle of the Quran itself. Here you have individuals who are Arabs. Here you have a book that is revealed in Arabic. All right. They are familiar with the letters of the Arabic language, but they are not familiar with the arrangement of certain letters like that. They're not familiar with why certain letters are this way. They never seen this style. Okay. So it shows the miracle of the Quran, the great and esteemed Quran. When I had the Quran, lam ya'ti bi kalimat. He says, because the Quran is not something that just came with words. Or it came with words that was issued or that humans don't speak at all. The Quran didn't come like that. All right. It came very relatable. And this is something that we must understand. You want to reach your people, you want to be direct, and you want to be able to touch people or be able to, you have to relate. If you look in the Quran, Allah Jalla wa Ala tells us in Surah Al-Furqan in the 25th chapter that one of the things that the disbelievers of the Quraysh and the Mushrikeen during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they will make a question as, why isn't an angel sent down to us? Why haven't Allah sent an angel to us as a messenger? And Allah Jalla wa Ala clarifies that if Allah would have sent an angel to you, angels are of different creation. You're humans. It wouldn't have benefited you. One, you probably wouldn't believe. Second, how can you relate? There's no relatable there. What can you relate with the angels? All right. But Allah said he sent someone from amongst you, a human like you, so that you can relate. So relating to one another is something extremely important, especially when you want to get a message across to someone. Because if you can see it and someone who actually see the same thing as you can see, y'all witness the same thing, y'all actually can understand that y'all can comprehend one another, and things can be done that way. He says here, he says, وَإِنَّمَا هُوَ مِنَ الْحُرُوفِ الَّتِي لَا تَعُدُّ مَا يَتَكَلَّمُ بِهِ الْبَشَرُ وَمَعَ ذَلِكَ فَقَدْ أَعْجَزَهُمْ. So he says that these letters were only letters that were what? That the people, the humans spoke with. It's just something that the humans spoke with. So number one, they can recognize that what? It is a book for them, and they can understand it. It's not a book where as though it's confused as metal. He said, along with that, they still was unable. Look at this. They still was unable to challenge it, to master it, all right, to produce something like it. Okay, they still weren't able to even crack it. So if that's the case, Allah sent down something in your language, something that you can understand, letters that you recognize, but you still are dumbfounded or you still cannot actually crack it or challenge it. This is showing the miracle of that. This is what he's saying. He said this is the most clearest of forms of something of a miraculous nature. لأنه لو كان في القرآن حروف أخرى لا يتكلم الناس بها لم يكن إعجاز في ذلك واقعا. He said because he says here, have it been the case that the Quran were revealed in other letters that the people did not speak, right? Then it would not be considered, in actuality, it would not be considered as a miracle. لكنه بنفس الحروف التي يتكلم بها الناس ما هذا فقد أعجزهم. However, because it was the same letters with which the people used to speak their own language, and even with that, along with this, they were still unable to actually crack it. الله أكبر. فحكمة منها ظهور إعجاز القرآن الكريم في أبلغ ما يكون من العبارة. So one of the wisdoms that we can take from all of this, the Sheikh is saying, is that which is apparent of the miraculous nature of the generous or the noble Quran in regards to its conveying, the most conveying of the best ways of an expression can actually be used. He says, قالوا ويدل على ذلك أنه ما من سورة تفتحت بهذه الحروف إلا وللقرآن فيها الذكر. إلا بعد السورة قليلة لم يذكروا فيها القرآن لكن ذكر مكانا من خصائص القرآن. He says, here some of the scholars, they use other different points of wisdoms that they extract for these letters. And he said that because what is indicated by that is that there is not a surah that opened up with these letters, Aleph, Lam, Mim, except that the Quran is therein is mentioned. The Quran therein is mentioned. Or there are some surahs, short surahs, that the Quran is not mentioned. لكن ذكر مكانا من خصائص القرآن. However, what is mentioned from it is some of the characteristics or those things which is special to the Quran itself. All right. فمثل قوله تعالى, he said, for example, the statement of Allah Jalla wa'ala in the beginning of Surah Maryam, the 19th chapter of the Quran. Allah says, Kaf, Ha, Ya, Ain, Swad. He mentioned here about 5 letters. Kaf, Ha, Ya, Ain, Swad. ليس بعدها ذكر القرآن, but Allah doesn't mention the Quran after mentioning these letters. All right, ولكن جاء في السورة الخاصية من خصائص القرآن وهي ذكر قصص من كان قبلنا. ذكر, Allah says, ذكر رحمة ربك عبده زكريا. He says, however, there does come in the surah something that is specific from the those things which are special for the Quran. وهي, and that is mention of the story of those who come before us. Allah says, mention to them the mercy of your Lord to his servant Zakaria. كذلك في سورة الروم قال الله تعالى في أولها, Allah says the same letters he says in Surah Baqarah, Alif Lam Mim. So the reason why I'm saying all of this and why we were going over Baqarah in the first place, I'm not going to do the entire surah, it's too long, but I'm going to do selective verses from there to show us the connection between the Quran addressing our problems and connection with the Quran being the healing and being the solution. And that understanding that the Creator has not left us wandering about aimlessly. He have not left us without a purpose or design. That he have not left us or abandoned us, created us and never looked at us. No, this is something that we must understand. The last revealed book need our attention. It needs our attention. Okay? It's something that we must delve into. We cannot afford the luxury of overlooking this particular book. Under no circumstances can we overlook this book. All right. And he goes in dealing with more of the examples of Aleph Lam Mim. All right. So he says, فهذا قول الذي اختاره شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية واختاره جمع من أهل العلم هو راجع. So the second opinion is what he's saying is was that which was chosen by, and the second opinion, again, if you don't know, is that the letters themselves don't have a meaning unrestricted. The letters themselves don't have a meaning unrestricted. As far as the wisdom of it, then that's something different. The letters themselves are letters in the Arabic language that don't contain no meaning. But as far as the wisdom of it is something different. This is something that was chosen by Shaykh Islam Taymiyyah, Ibn Qayyim, and many of the other scholars from Ahlul Ilm to be the correct view, the preponderant view in this case. And the hikmah min hadha dhuhur i'jaz al-Qur'an fi ablagh usul. He said, as far as the wisdom of it, then it's just showing it outwardly shows the miraculous nature of the Quran in terms of it, in terms of its image, in terms of haythu inna Quran lam ya'ti bi jadidin min huruf, because the Quran did not come with something new. It didn't come with new letters, something that the people were foreign to. No, it actually came in their language. He says, مع ذلك فإن أهل اللغة العربية عجزوا عن معارضته وهم البلغاء وفصحاء. And he said, وفصحاء. He said that indeed the people of the Arabic language, they were still unable to contradict it or oppose it, even though they were the most um, fluent and eloquent in this particular language. They still weren't able to actually crack it. وقال بعضهم إن حكمة منها تنشيط السامعين فإذا تلي القرآن وقرئ قوله تعالى ألف لام ميم كأنه تعالى يقول أنصتوا وذلك لأجل المشركين حتى ينصتوا له. He says some of the people of knowledge, they said that indeed the wisdom from it, it is to encourage the listener. Okay, it is to encourage the listener. سامعين فإذا تلي القرآن. So when the Quran is recited, or you read the, if you were to read the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, Alif Lam Mim, is as if Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is saying, "Be quiet." وذلك لأجل المشركين حتى ينصتوا له. And he says, and that for that particular reason, in order for the mushrikeen, and so they can be silent and listen to it. ولكن هذا قول فيه نظر. The Sheikh said, however, this opinion, it needs some investigation behind it. We cannot solely. He said, لأنه لو كان كذلك لكان هذا في كل السورة مع أن أكثر السورة غير مبتدئ بمثل هذا الحروف. He says, because if that was the case, then this would be the beginning of every surah that comes in the Quran. And it's already known, although that many of the surahs don't even begin or start with the likes of these letters, Alif Lam Mim. All right. وأيضا also لو كان كذلك ما صارت في سورة مدنية. He says, likewise, if that been the case, then the Medina surahs, مثل سورة البقرة, like the surah we're talking about here, Surah Baqarah, لأن سورة مدنية ليس فيها أحد he says يليق في القرآن. فالصواب أن حكمة من ذلك هو ظهور إعجاز القرآن. And he says that what is correct view of the wisdom behind it is that the fact that it shows the miraculous nature of the Quran. طيب. Now, we get into the meat of this. Allah Jalla wa Ala, he begins after saying Alif Lam Mim, these separate letters. And I hope everyone is with me now, that the letters themselves in the Arabic language do not contain a meaning. As far as the wisdom of them, then it shows the miraculous natures of the Quran. Okay? Because the Arabs were able to identify the letters, but still by them being eloquent and so forth, they still weren't able to understand it. As far as the knowing why Allah Jalla wa Ala chose certain letters and arranged them in a certain order, then that knowledge is with Allah Jalla wa Ala himself. Okay? That's the view that Shaykh Uthaymeen is telling us here. So Allah says in the next verse, the second verse of Surah Baqarah, Allah says, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ. I want you to pay attention to what's going on here. And sometimes this is a big major problem with us because we get lazy, man. Someone tell you, okay, I have a book for you to study, and that if you finish this particular book, you're going to unlock the richness of your life. You're going to have many treasures. You're going to be financially stable. You're going to be etc. A few people knocking down the doors just to finish the book. Some people will stay up all night to finish the book. Some people do this. And they would try their best. We would study hard. What they didn't understand, they would try to recomprehend again for some financial gain. But here is a roadmap to your life. I mean, your life, your real essence life, because there are three components of a person. There are three components of a person. There's not one component of a person. Man's essence is just three parts of that man. That man have a soul, a spirit, and he has a body. So each of those things still have to undergo certain processes. So if that's the case, the body dies, but the soul doesn't. The body dies, but the soul does not. This is something that even the atibba, the doctors, a lot of them argue amongst themselves in regards to whether or not the soul actually exists because they can't see it. Okay? It's something that's not seen with the human eye. So they argue whether or not it's actually in existence. But do not forget the fact that man go from stage to stage to stage. And that's what life has been showing us. Allah shows you that with nature. We have 4 seasons. Allah shows you perfectly over and over. And he used these verses with Shaykh Uthaymeen and many of the ulama. They mentioned that the Quran deals with 5 major components. And one of them is what we call aqliya. Allah used rational proof because he gave each of us faculties to think. So he used rational proof, things that you can actually think and ponder on yourself. So Allah Jalla wa Ala tells you in the Quran, do they not look at the earth how it's full and decked, and it's actually what the flowers, everything is blooming, and then it goes to be dry, stubble, the leaves fall off. We see this in the fall. Allah says at the end of these verses, Allah mentioned likewise will be a resurrection. What is the connection there? Why is he showing? He's showing you something that has life, that's alive, that was active, that becomes inactive, that becomes lifeless, and that the cycle repeats itself. So if he can do that with nature, what makes you think he can't do that with your soul? What he can't do with your bodies? Do you understand? That's the connection there. And he's used that as one of the, it's a strong argument because that process is something that you can see. Tangibly, you can see the process, right? So he says here, Allah says, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ. For those of you who don't know the Arabic language, Shaykh Uthaymeen is going to explain something to us. Why is Allah saying ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ? ذَلِكَ is a ismun ishara, brothers and sisters. So ismun ishara is something that we are familiar with in our own language, in English, which is called a demonstrative pronoun. Demonstrative pronouns are used to point things out, all right? Okay? But this particular demonstrative pronoun, ذَلِكَ, is used for things that are of some type quite distance. All right. This is a microphone. That is a library. All right. The library is not close to me in proximity, but I'm moving it a little bit distant. That is that. So you're pointing something out. But why is Allah using dhalika, which is used for something what we say lil bu'd, is used for something distance, and here he's using the word kitab. Kitab, a book, right? Which is also used for something that is close. It's qarib. The 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 proper demonstrative pronoun that should have been used. I'm not going to say should. F1. I'm not going to say that. But if you were looking at the Arabic language, or you're looking at language, the proper pronoun that you think that would have went there would have been hadha kitab, this book, or hadha huwa kitab, this is the book. You would have thought that would have been used. But I want you to pay attention to something because nothing is haphazard in the Quran. Allah says, ذَلِكَ kitab. Why would he say that? And it's not translated as that book, that the book. It's not translated as that. But he says, ذَلِكَ kitab. It's important for you to pay attention to these, I want to call them nuances, but I want you to pay attention to this point here. Allah Jalla wa ala, he says, ذَلِكَ kitab. ذا اسم الإشارة. We already explained that. فإذا كان مشار إليه بعيد تأتي بهذه اللام. So we already explained all of that. Al-Ula, the Sheikh, he says, as for the kaf, when it's used for khitab, addressing someone, then it comes in three ways that it can be used in the Arabic language. مراعاة المخاطب فإن كان مفردا مذكرا فتحت وإن كان مفردا مؤنثا كسرت وإن كان مثنى قرنت بالميم. So in other words, he's telling you that the ka, that is the ismul ishara, but the ka here, dhalika, all right? Depend on who's being addressed, you can use it to fit that person that's being addressed. Okay, you have first person, second person, third person. All right, you can use it. So, for example, if I'm talking to a male, I can say dhalika, the kaf now with the fatha. If I'm talking to a female, I can say dhaliki, the kaf with the kasra. If I'm talking to those who are muthanna, I'm going to connect a meme to it and say dhalikuma. All right, that go for male or female. If I'm talking in a plural sense to males, then I will say, the shit goes here. Then I will say, if I'm talking to males, I'm going to say dhalikum. All right. If I'm talking to females, I'm going to say dhalikun. All right. And that's basically what he explained it to us there. So when you see the kaf there attached to it, you can see that. But Allah says here, dhalikal. All right. And we know that the word kitab is masculine. Brothers and sisters, when you study tafsir, this is all a part of it. The Arabic language. The Quran is understood from 5 point of views. The Quran bil Quran, the Quran explains itself. The Quran bil Hadith, the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the authentic Hadith explains the Quran. And then we say the Quran understood by the aqwal or the qawl or the positions of the companions, and then we say that the language is used to understand the Quran, all right, which ties in it. Sometimes shi'r, poetry, is used. All right. And one of the things that you don't use to understand the Quran, that is explicitly clear all across the board from both past and present, is that you do not use your own right, your own opinion. You do not use your own opinion when it comes to the Quran. This is something that you should not use. All right. So here he says here that these are the different ways that the kaf is used in the language. He says here that so when Allah Jalla wa Ala says وَخِطَابُ فِي قَوْلِهِ ذَلِكَ لِكُلِّ مُخَاطَبٍ يُصِحُّ أَنْ يُوَجَّهُ إِلَيْهِ خِطَابٌ. What is understood here is that Allah Jalla wa Ala, he says, it's لِكُلِّ مُخَاطَبٍ, anyone that can be addressed, it is correct that it be directed towards the one being addressed. Anyone that can be addressed. All right. He says, وَمَعْنَ ذَلِكَ أَيُّهَا الْإِنسَانُ مُخَاطَبٌ. So what it means, oh man, the one that's being addressed here, oh man, that's what it means. He said, مُرَادًا بِالْكِتَابِ, and what's intended by the word kitab here, which is something you're going to learn throughout the Quran as you study it, because the Quran should not just be read. It should not just be recited. It should be studied. And if you are a believer, and this is why we're going to, a part of this series, we're going to cover that too. We're going to cover the essence of man. What is man? What man composed of? We're going to go through all of that. And we're going to go through some of the things that man already comes with intricately, that he already has a part of his makeup, all right, whether male or female. And then we're going to sort through that and understand the difference between calamities and things that happen, why they happen, and what's supposed to be happening, what you do, how you respond. We have to understand that the book of Allah deals with our problems and stop believing, because we're in the 21st century and because people are getting major bucks over providing solutions for you with medications at the medications for problems that man had for centuries. But now we can come with a easy, quick fix. We're not going to look at the mental instability. We're not going to look at some of the intricate things that cause this problem. We're going to say, take this pill and it will help you numb the problem. Take this pill, it will help you hope to help you operate, help you function better. So then we make a bunch of addicts that are addicted to the drug itself and not even curing or fixing the actual problem at hand. Do you not understand that? You do not understand. This is important. This is very important. So we deal with a lot of the things that we go through back and forth because we're not properly using what we're supposed to use to deal with those issues. You can't blame society. You can't blame other than yourself when you fail to recognize what is a desire and what isn't. Okay? Because you have been dealt a bad hand, as they so to speak, that's for the lack of better words, because you have been dealt or treated poorly, it does not give you the right to indulge in your own desires and to make excuses for them because of what happened to you. That cannot happen. If you do that, if you allow yourself to do that, then you are a part of the problem. Okay, you are part of the problem why you can't, quote unquote, become fixed, why you are still stuck in a certain stumble. You are part of that. You're stuck here in this place. You're stuck in that place because you allow yourself to engage in what you shouldn't be engaged in the first place. This is important. So we hear a lot of people, yes, mental health is serious. But what is mental health? We always hear the word mental health. My mentality is, it's impaired. I'm not functioning like a proper person or average person should function. But what is the average person? What is mental health? Your mental in Islam is connected to the condition of your heart. Do you not understand this? This is important. Your mental in Islam is connected to the condition of your heart. Your heart is the king of your limbs. Do you not understand this? Problems that occur outside of your control have nothing to do with your mental health. Problems that occur outside of your control has nothing to do with your mental health. Problems that occur at your own hands is something totally different altogether. Problems that occur from your own hands is something totally different altogether. But if it occur outside of your control, it have nothing to do with your mental health at all. And this is the crux. So we're going to become victims of what we're saying we are, then we're going to allow ourselves to become victims of that because this is what we want, the handicap. La, the book of Allah addresses psychological issues. It addresses emotional issues. It addresses all of them. How you properly supposed to think. There is a borderline. There is a borderline. And you should know when you're going over that line. If you're thinking healthy thoughts and good thoughts about Allah, you're thinking that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control of everything. You're thinking that Allah, if He loves you, He will test you. You're thinking that Allah Jalla wa ala will give you the stamina and the ability to exercise patience. You're thinking that Allah will give you the help and the support of not following and indulging in. Then these are the things that you understand that borderline. This keep you straight, not falling into that pit or that abyss of depression. But the moment you allow yourself to start thinking bad and start thinking that Allah doesn't have you or Allah isn't there or that this isn't that, then that's when the shaitan comes in. That's what Allah tells us in the Quran. Allah tells us what? Allah says the shaitan threaten you with poverty. Allah said that the shaitan calls you to fear. They fear the shaitan as they should fear Allah. Allah tells you the things, the different things. You cross over because your thought process is tangled. It's whether you have healthy thoughts or unhealthy thoughts. And when you have unhealthy thoughts, that's the other line you shouldn't be on. And that's what's going to what? Mess with your mental health. You don't get it. That's what's going to make you unstable. Because first of all, you're trotting on grounds that you don't even understand. You don't even understand those grounds. One, do you have control of the issue or not? Did you ask yourself that? Do I really control what just happened? What part of it do I have control over? Two, if it did happen, why? What's the reason? How should I look at it? How should I deal with it? Who else have went through this? Who can be my example? How to get over? How to overcome? None of these things are coming to you. None of them. But at the same time, all you can think about is I'm been dealt a bad hand. Nobody understand me. That's not the correct view to have, inshallah ta'ala, when dealing with these issues. The Sheikh, he says, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ. Allah Jalla wa ala, He mentions the dhalika, and He says, what's intended by the kitab, what you're going to learn throughout the book of Allah, is that Allah called the Quran many different names. And one of the names for the Quran is called kitab. بِمَعْنَ maktub. What is understood from is something that is written. Okay? It's something that is written. لأن فعال كما تأتي مصدارا مثل القتال والنضال, and he given us some grammatical benefits here. That sometimes that when a word come on a certain pattern, such as fi'al, it can also come with the meaning of a masdar, a verbal noun. All right, طيب. So the Sheikh, he continues. He says, Allah says ذلك الكتاب, something that is written. فهو مكتوب عند الله وهو أيضا مكتوب بصحف مكرمة كما قال الله تعالى. So the book of Allah Jalla wa ala is written. We know that it's taken from Lahu Mahfuz. All right. If I was to ask one of you guys right now, what is the isnad of the Quran? How many people are in the isnad of the Quran? All right. So the correct view is that the isnad of the Quran only have how many people in it? It only has three. All right. The correct view is that it's only three people in the chain. When we say isnad, there are only three people in the chain when it comes to the Quran. That's who? Allah, Jibril, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah, Jibril, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's it. That's the three people in the chain. All right. So when you look at it, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam got it from Jibril. Jibril alayhi salam got it from Allah. All right. They got it from Allah. This is important that you understand. He says here that also it is written in the honorable pages. As Allah says in the Quran, في صحف مكرمة مرفوعة مطهرة بأيدي سفرة في سورة عبسة. Allah says that they are in honorable pages, raised and purified, مرفوعة مطهرة, and that they are in the honorable hands of the scribes, meaning the angels there. وهو مكتوب في الصحف التي بين أيدي الناس. It is also something that we see written physically in the hands, in the pages that's between the hands of men. وأشار إلى بأداة البعيد لعلو منزلته. Pay attention to this. The reason why Allah used dalika and not hada is because when Allah used it, it indicates the loftiness of the position of the Quran itself. So the Quran is high. It was sent down, right? It's high. It's high in its values. It's high in its morals. It's high in its instructions. High in its wisdom. It's high in its command. High in its actual its style, its presentation, and its eloquence. It's high at every level you can think of. The Quran is elevated. So by using Dalik al-Kitab, Allah is pointing to us the loftiness of the book. This is the reason why we wanted to cover this verse, to show you that you're not dealing with an average book written by an author. You understand? You're dealing with a book that is high on every level that you can think of. That there is nothing higher than this particular book because it's the speech of Allah. But you have to understand that. He says what? He says, لِأَنَّ أَشْرَفَ كِتَابْ وَأَعْظَمَ كِتَابْ. Because if the book is a noble book, then it is a mighty and exalted book. Allah says, لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Okay? The Shaykh, he says here that there is no doubt contained within this book, and there's a guidance for the muttaqin. أَهْلُ النَّحْوِ يَقُولُونَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ هُنَا نَافِيَةً لِلْجِنْسِ. And then he goes into what the people of the grammarians they say in regards to the Arabic language. They say that the la here, it is used to negate the actual type, okay, or the kan. Raib ismuha mabniyu ala fat, and raib is something that is built upon a fatha. It's constructed upon a fatha. If you look at the Arab, raiba, okay, it has the fatha at the end. لأنه مركب معها فهي في محل نصب ويقولون إن لا نافية للجنس تفيد العموم في أقصى غايته يعني تدل على إيه. And he's going to tell us what all of this means. عموم مطلق فتشمل قليل وكثير فإذا القرآن ليس فيه ريب لا قليل ولا كثير. And basically, in a nutshell, is what he's telling us that if you look at it from the Arabic point of view and from the grammar point of view, you're going to see that it gives no room for any kind of doubt, whether large or small. All right, okay. Any form of doubt, it doesn't give no room for that. So whether it's a large amount of doubt or whether it's a small amount of doubt, doubt cannot approach this book. This changed the whole dynamics. Because if you say you're a believer and you say you believe in Allah Azza wa Jal, there is no way you can open the book of Allah and say you got any type of doubt. Period. You must understand this now. You can't look into the book of Allah. Oh, I doubt this issue. You ain't saying it to nobody, but you feel it in your heart. No, you can't do that because there's no room that whatever's contained in this book contain any doubt. This is why you look at it. La rayba fi. There is no doubt contained within it. He says, والريب هو الشك, his doubt. ولكن ليس مطلق شك. بل الشك مصحوب بقلق قوة الداعي موجب للشك أو لأن النفس لا تطمئن لهذا الشك. And he's telling us that the difference here is saying that a person, normally the self, it would not be satisfied with this type of doubt. It will always be some type of like uncertainty, a person not clear, uncertain, so forth. He says فيقال منه بخلاف مطلق الشك ولهذا من فسر الريب بالشك فهذا تفسير تقريبي لأن بينهما فرقا. And he says for the people who explained raib, which also can mean doubt, all right, to mean shak, he says no, it's not like that. There's a difference between both words. All right, both of them expresses doubt, but the doubt is different. All right, shak is not unrestrictedly doubt. Raib is something different. So the Sheikh is pointing out that point to us, inshallah, which just shows us what? That we need to start learning the Arabic language because the words, they do have meanings and they all don't mean the same thing. They are all synonymous. All right, they have different meanings and they give you a better appreciation, understanding the book. ونافي هنا على بابه فجملة خبرية هذا هو الراجع وكيل إن بمعنى النهي أي لا ترتاب فيه وأول أبلغ فإن قال قائل ما وجه رجحاني. All right, so the Sheikh is explaining to us that the negation that is present here, all right, is a certain type of sentence, which is a khabari sentence or informative sentence. And this is the correct view. And it is said that it means prohibition. Because sometimes when you hear the word la, like if I tell you, for example, la tajlisu, don't sit down, all right? Here, I'm not commanding you. This is not a prohibited la here. This is just a negation. But if I tell you la tajlis, don't sit, All right. And I make that scene become subjunctive now, madzum. Then you know it's a command, and then that is a prohibition. So in the hadith and also in the Quran, you're going to see sometimes the lab mean different meanings. All right. So sometimes it's prohibited, and sometimes it is a general negation and it's not prohibited. And sometimes it comes in different forms. This is when you start studying usul fiqh and learning things like that. And this is one of the good things about referring back to the people of knowledge, because also Sheikh Uthaymeen was also from the fuqaha. He also was from the the grammarians as well. So here he brings some points on that to explain for us. He says, so someone was to ask us, um, if someone was to come and ask, what is the correct angle to understand how to weigh all of this that you're talking about for us, the different doubts and things? He said, for Jawab, أن هذا يبني على قاعدة هامة في فهم وتفسير القرآن. He said that this will be based or construct upon a very important principle concerning the comprehension and the tafsir of the Quran. وهي أن يجب علينا إجراء القرآن على ظاهره. This is important, that the first thing that we must do when it comes to the speech of Allah is always take it upon its apparent meaning first. You understand that? This is what the scholars explain, that when you comes to the book of Allah, take it upon its apparent meaning first. All right. He says next, فما دمت تريد تفسير القرآن لا 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 لا. He says here, وألا نصرفه عن الظاهر إلا بالدليل, and that we do not change it from its apparent meaning unless we have evidence to tell us to do likewise. Okay, so if Allah Jalla wa Ala said that he have two hands, we take it literally that he have two hands. But we know that Allah Jalla wa Ala also say, there's nothing like unto him, so those hands cannot be like our hands. That's pretty much what the Sheikh is saying. So we take that literally like it is, but we don't change it or distort it or make ta'wil, okay? Nor do we make ta'til. We do not negate it from its apparent meaning. All of this is important. You see how all this connects? You see how Aqidah connects with reading the Quran? You know, dealing with Aqeedah, Allah. You see all of that connects, by the way. Those different disciplines and different sciences in Islam, they all intertwine. I mean, and it's very important for you to understand this. He says here, what he said that he says, Allah says in the Quran, he mentions when it comes to the divorcee, when you divorce a woman, right? How long does her iddah period last for, right? In terms of here, Allah Jalla wa Ala said the person should wait, they should wait, meaning the females, the ones that are divorced, they should wait how long? 3 cycles. He used the word kuru here. All right, 3 cycles talking about their menses. And this is a Surah Baqarah, by the way. He says, if you look at the ayat, apparently the ayat is dealing with khabar. It's information. You understand? It's informing us. This is a formative ayat. If you look at it, right? Apparently. He says, لكن مراد به الأمر. However, the intent of the ayat itself is a command. It looks like khabar, like Allah informing you this, but this is a command. They must wait those 3 cycles. You understand what he's saying? Even though Allah worded that way, but Allah Jalla wa Ala wasn't just informing them that. He was commanding that when you divorce woman, she should wait 3 cycles. Okay? The Shaykh is just showing you, because it came in that form does not mean that it cannot be a command. Sometimes that's like that. It's the case. He said, هذه الظاهرها قبر لكن مراد بها الأمر لأنه قد لا تربص مطلقا فما دمت تريد تفسير القرآن الكريم فيجب عليك أن تجريه على ظاهره إلا ما دل دليل على خلافه. He says, so as long as you want to understand or comprehend the Quran properly, and we got to get ready to stop. As long as you want to be able to understand and comprehend the Quran properly, and these are some beautiful principles and rules pertaining to the Quran. He said, then is it coming upon you that you carry the Quran upon its apparent meaning unless you have an evidence that indicates like otherwise, the opposite of it, okay? He says, وَذَلِكَ لِأَنَّ الْمُفَسِّرَ لِلْقُرْآنِ شَاهِدُ عَلَى اللَّهِ بِأَنَّهُ أَرَادَ بِهِ كَذَا. Now, this is another beautiful point. Pay attention to this. He says that the one who reached the level of being able to explain the Quran, the mufassir, all right, this person, he is a shahid. He is a witness, عَلَى اللَّهِ بِأَنَّهُ أَرَادَ بِهِ كَذَا, that he is a witness for the people that Allah intend or Allah meant by this with his words. You understand that? That's what the mufassir actually acts as. When we have a mufassir, someone who explained the Quran to us, someone who reached that level and with the rules and things like that, they are giving us what Allah intends by that when he says this. or when he words this. Do you understand that? It's a major component there. He says here, he says لأن مفسر القرآن الشرعي he says وكذا وأنت لو فسرت كلام بشر على خلاف ظاهره للامك هذا المتكلم وقال لماذا تحمل كلامي على خلاف ظاهره. He says, so think about it. If you're explaining somebody else's words, all right, your mother or your father said something and you went back and explained their words, you gave a little sharh to it, right? All right, explain their words, but you explain it other than what they intended by it. Would they not be upset? Would they not say something to you like, what are you doing? Why did you misconstrue my words? Why did you misplace my words? Why did you explain that? I didn't mean that when I said that. So how much more so when it comes to the words of Allah? How much more so when it comes to the words of Allah? Do you understand? This is why being a mufassir of the Quran requires fear. It requires taqwa. You understand? And this is why when you look back at the Athars and you see the earlier Salaf like Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, anhu, when they asked him about a verse in the Quran, what did he say? He said, what sky will actually cover me? Huh? Who will protect me if I say something about the book of Allah that Allah did not say? You understand? This is why you can see that physical effect on them. Because they knew if they're going to speak about Allah's words or what it meant, what Allah said and what it meant, you got to be a brave person. You got to be real brave. We ask Allah to protect us from misconstruing His words. I mean, and to allow us to understand His words properly, inshallah. He said, وقال, he mentioned here, مع أنك لو فسرت كلام هذا الرجل على خلاف الظاهر لكن أهون اللوم مما لو فسرت كلام الله. يعني متكلم غير الله ربما يكفي عليه معنى أو يعيده التعبير يعبر بشيء ظاهر خلاف ما يريده. And then he tells us there's reasons it's possible when you start explaining to other people's words. It's many reasons why you might not understand their words. So when you go to explain it and you don't explain it in the way that they are, you can misunderstood the expression. You can it's different things that you can actually do, which will cause you to be blameworthy when you go to explain their words. So you got to be extremely careful when we're dealing with the speech of Allah Jalla wa Ala. Do you understand that? We have to be extremely careful when we're dealing with what? The speech of Allah Jalla wa Ala. Um, and then let's finish just this part here. La read. He says, قوله تعالى لا ريب فيه ظاهرها أنها جملة خبرية تفيد النفي ومعنى ليس فيه ريب أبدا. He says, what's apparent from this part of the verse, La Rayba Fi, no doubt therein. He said, what's apparent is that it is a informative sentence which benefits negation. And what it means that there can never contain any doubt in it whatsoever. It is said that the qabr here means a prohibition. La Rayba Fi, meaning La Taratabu Fi. Don't doubt therein. So some of the scholars, they said that no, it don't mean just a negation, like not to have doubt. It means don't doubt. Don't you doubt anything in this book. Some of the scholars, they argue that. All right. He says, وَالَذِي أَوْجَبَ بمعنى, he said, what? He says, وَالَذِي أَوْجَبَ أَنْ يُفَسِّرُ النَّفِي نفي بمعنى النهي قالوا لأنه قد حصل فيه ريب من الكفار ومنافقين قال الله تعالى فهم في ريبهم يترددون. He said, and what binds them to explain that the negation here comes with the meaning of prohibition is because they say that indeed there has occurred therein doubt from the non-believers and the hypocrites. Allah says about them, there are those people who are in doubt, yataraddadun. They're constantly in doubt and rejecting. So this is what he's saying. He says, فَلَا يَسْتَقِيمُ النَّفْيِ حِينَئِذٍ. So they say for here, then the negation does not, therefore wherewith the negation does not remain or stands. وتكون هذه قرينة واقية من ارتباب بعض الناس في القرآن قرينة موجبة للصرف وقبل. All right? Important, right? And then he says here والقرآن من حيث هو قرآن لا ريب فيه. عندما أقول لك هذا ما أؤذر فهذا بحسب. All right? So the Sheikh said فما علينا من هؤلاء إذا كان القرآن عندهم محل الريب فإن القرآن في حد ذاته ليس محل الريب. والله سبحانه وتعالى يصف القرآن من حيث هو قرآن على أن كثير من الذين ادعوا الارتباب كاذبون يقولون ذلك جحودا كما قال تعالى فإنهم لا يكذبونك ولكن الظالمين بآيات الله يجحدون فكثير منهم ربما لا يكون عنده ارتباب حقيقي في القرآن. No, alhamdulillah. So the Sheikh he goes into elaborate this whole issue of why it cannot be a negation, just a mere negation, and those who argue that no, it's a prohibition here, that you do not have doubt to what contains in the Quran, and not merely saying no, do not doubt. All right. And he brings different points of views here of the difference of something being in the being a doubt here and he brings different verses showing you that many of those who claim to have doubt, there were those who are kadibun, and yakulu, that they only said that because they were actuality, they were rejecting it, they were denying it, as Allah says about them. Indeed, they do not belie you. They do not belie you, O Muhammad. However, the Zalimeen, they reject the ayats of Allah, Surah An'am. فَكَثِيرٌ مِّنْهُمْ رُبَمَا لَا يَكُونَ عِنْدَهُ انْتِبَاهٌ حَقِيقِي فِي الْقُرْآنِ. He says, for many of them, it is possible that they do not have with them doubt in reality for regarding the Quran. ويكون في داخل نفسه يعرف هذا أن هذا ليس بقول الرسول وأن محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يستطيع أن يأتي بمثله. He said because deep down they already know that these words are in the words of Allah. I mean of the Messenger of Allah. They know that. They know that these words aren't the words of Muhammad, so they're not really doubting that. They don't doubt the fact that okay, Muhammad didn't make this up. He didn't produce the likes of this. Okay, so that's not the issue there. This is why you hear Allah Jalla wa'ala says what? يَعْرِفُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُ كَمَا يَعْرِفُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُم. I mean, يَعْرِفُونَهُ كَمَا يَعْرِفُوا أَبْنَاءَهُم. Allah says in Surah Baqarah, they know him. Him here is referring to Muhammad. They know him just as they know their own sons, because they weren't denying the fact that the speech of Allah wasn't the speech of Allah, or that Muhammad produced it. They were rejecting the message altogether. Juhudan. So the Shaykh is telling us sometimes that's how, when you look in the Quran, sometimes that's what it is. The doubt is really not a doubt, whereas though I'm doubting whether or not it comes from Allah, I'm just rejecting it. I don't want to accept it. Period. That's what the Shaykh is giving us here. He says, ولكن مع ذلك يجحدون وينكرون ولا هدف وجه أول هو وجه القوي الذي لا انفصام عنه، وهو أن الله تعالى وصف القرآن من حيث هو قرآن بقطع النظر أمن يتلى عليهم هذا القرآن أيرتابون أم لا يرتابون فيه. وقوله تعالى لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين، وقف بعض القراء على قوله تعالى لا ريب وعليه فيكون قبر لا محذوف وتقدير لا ريب في ذلك ويكون جار ومجرور قبر. So he says sometimes when you read this verse, and you'll see it in the what's the name, we're going to stop here at the end of this part of the particular verse. You'll see some people like the Mufassirun and some of the Qurra, when they recite, the reciters, they will stop with La Raib. All right. And you'll see those three little dots. It's like two sets of three little dots. And the rule pertaining to that is that when you stop on one, you have to say the other one. All right. You can't stop on both. So sometimes you will see in your mushaf, it will have the dots over la raib, the word raib, and then it will have the dots over fihi. So some people will stop at la raib. All right. That have something again dealing with the meanings. Right. And then some people will stop at la raiba fi. All right. So once you understand the tafsir a little bit, you will get to understand where you should stop at, and what is so that you can convey that meaning more better. So the Shaykh he brings those different positions here. He says Allah says hudan lil muttaqin. He says wataqwa tiqadu waqayatu min idab Allah azza wa jalla bi fi'l awamiri wa ijtinabun away. And it's funny, man, because all this stuff means stuff, right? And then we got people in our age, right, especially in this society, because they suffer from so many bad choices that they made out of their lives, right? They group it all together. And I'm not saying that mental health isn't real. Again, I'm not that type of person to dismiss something underhandedly. But we have to take accountability. Being a responsible human being, being a Muslim or believer, you have to take accountability. You have to understand your actions versus other actions. You have to understand your role and your choice and your decision making and your will. All of that must be understood. And you have to be able to distinguish between them. Allah says over and over in the Quran how he tells you that most of the things that happen to Bani Adam is because what their own hands put forth. This shows that mankind had a decision process. They made decisions that weren't beneficial to them. And in return, there were consequences of those decisions that they made. And that they cannot now separate themselves from the problem or the calamity and say, you know what, I really didn't have nothing to do with that. You know, all these people just ganged up against me. You know, all of this stuff just happened to me. You know, I really had nothing to do with that. How? Do you not listen to what you're saying? No. What part did you play in it? If you played a part in it, you need to hold yourself accountable. Accountability, it prevents a lot of things. which stay tuned. We're going to be doing the part two to the night shift on the molestation, dealing with the solutions, some of the solutions that we think that can help both the molester and the one who's molested. But you have to understand the accountability stop a lot of things. If a person doesn't hold themselves accountable, if there's no check and balances, it is folder, it is chaos. A person would do what they want to do to whom they want to do it to, and they would not stop to do it because you have to have that check and balances. So Allah has set up a perfect system within man. He gave him the right and the rest. We have inspired him to what? To that which is to show him the path of what is corrupt and what is that which is righteous and what is piety. Allah showed man that. You understand? So you have the choice decision process to make those decisions. Don't sit there and say you don't have a choice. No, you have a choice. That's where your control lies at. And the big problem is you want to sit there and submerge it and have everyone feel sorry for you. And then you want to place it under the bracket because this is what they're doing nowadays. This is mental health. So I'm going to place it under that. No, you're missing one major component with mental health. In Islam, the mental is where? The heart. So if the heart is unhealthy, that's where the instability starts from. Okay? Now, yes, there are things that happen in our lives that trigger different things. Yes, there are things that happen in our lives that leaves a psychological residue. There are things that happen in our lives that leaves a physical residue. That's true. But then there's also something that we can counteract that makes it that counteracts those things that happen. And the way that we look at things is extremely important. How you view something is extremely perspective. So if you don't look at it in the way that it needs to be understood, then you're going to be unstable. There's going to be instability in your life. You're not going to be balanced. But you can't point your finger at the creator. And most times you probably can't even point your finger at the creation. If you are a part of the creation, cause some of that problem. You have to go back within yourself and you have to take accountability, man. That's what the Quran teaches us. That's what Islam teaches us. Take accountability. And when you put that check and balances on yourself, trust me, a lot of this unstableness and this mental health that you parading around, you're going to realize that, I am the problem to my own mental health. I am the problem to my own mental health. I am the problem that keeping this stupor going on. Because the shaitan, he don't have solutions for you. So when you give into bad thoughts, of course you're going to be depressed. Did you not get it? It's a state. Depression is a state. So of course you're going to be depressed because the shaitan wants you to look at the world gloomy. There isn't no hope. The shaitan wants you to cut off the connection you need to give you the hope. The shaitan wants you to separate yourself from the only hope that you have. So of course it's going to be a state of depression and you always down and you're feeling moody because you didn't gave into that. But if you would have held on to the thicker of Allah, if you would have held on to the connection of making your heart sound, if you would have held on to understanding the qadr, if you would have held on to sabr, if you would have understood to gratitude, you would have held on to these different things, being constantly reflective, you would have held on to love, eating healthy, all of these different things that ties in to keep you stable, you would have won. You understand? You would have won. So stay tuned, inshallah ta'ala, for the next part of this series. We will get into the 3 different types of people so we can understand our characteristics as humans. Allah has addressed that in the Quran. We're going to get into the 3 different types of people and we'll deal with the vices and things like that. Whatever we said that was incorrect is definitely from ourselves and the shaitan. Whatever we said is correct is from Allah who Jalla wa ala. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Jazakallah khairan again, brothers and sisters, for tuning in. May Allah Jalla reward you all and allow us to benefit, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.